Hello, hi friends, my name is Nilesh. In this video, we are going to start using Terraform to provision resources. If you don't know Terraform is one of the most popular tool for creating infrastructure as code, and using the Terraform modules or Terraform scripts, we can provision resources in Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and various other providers which are supported by Terraform. Earlier on this channel, I had done a video about how to install Terraform on Mac OS, and if you have a Mac OS and if you want to start using Terraform or if you want to install Terraform, you can refer to that video. This video is a very simple step to getting started with Terraform and creating resources using Terraform. So let's get started. There are some prerequisites for this particular video or to follow the steps that I show in this video. First and foremost, we need to have Terraform installed on our machine and set up correctly. Second, I'm going to use the Visual Studio Code, which is my favorite code editor for creating the Terraform related files using the HashiCorp language. And for that, I'm also going to use a couple of extensions in Visual Studio Code. We are going to use the HashiCorp Terraform extension and also the Azure Terraform. These are optional. If you don't want to install these extensions, you can still work with normal Visual Studio Code. But having these extensions, they help you to make your experience of working with Terraform files better. You get things like autocomplete, you get suggestions, you get syntax highlighting and things like that. Third is the Azure CLI. We are going to have to configure the Azure CLI to connect to Microsoft Azure, because we'll be creating a resource group, which is a very basic concept in Microsoft Azure. Resource groups are like a logical container for creating the resources and having them logically connected to one another. So we are going to start with a very simple resource in Microsoft Azure, and we need the Azure CLI to be configured and connected to our Microsoft Azure account. So with that, let's get started and see how do we go about creating the resource groups using Terraform. While using Terraform, there are different stages or different steps which are required. And here I've highlighted or shown on this particular screen the four major steps or stages which we will be using. We start with the init, which is used to connect or which is used to provide the information about which provider we are going to use. Then we run the Terraform plan, which will plan for the creation of our resources. This is like a dry run, which will tell us how many resources are going to be created and if we want to make any changes to those resources. Then we use Terraform apply to actually apply those changes to our infrastructure and provision the actual resources in our target environment. Last is the destroy, which is for deleting those resources in case we want to delete them. So without any further ado, let's go and get started with looking at how to create the resource group in Microsoft Azure. So as I was saying, I'm going to use this Azure Terraform and HashiCorp Terraform as two extensions within the Visual Studio Code. I will put links to both these extensions in the description of this video. I have already created a folder here called Resource Group Basic, and inside that folder I have this file called as the main.tf. .tf is the extension used for Terraform files, and main is the convention used for creating the starting file, or that's the main module of the whole infrastructure that we want to create. We define some settings related to Terraform here by saying that required version of Terraform is at least 1.9.4. We have put greater than or equal, which means that if there is a higher version, we can use version which is higher than 1.9.4, but minimum we require 1.9.4. If we are using version which is less than 1.9, we will get an error here. The next one is to define the provider. We define this by using the required providers tag here or sections, and we are going to use a provider called Azurerm or Azure Resource Manager, which is sourced from HashiCorp, and the version for this is 3.114.0 or higher. We can specify the exact version. The reason I have specified greater than or equal to is because when I run the Terraform plan or Terraform init, I want to make sure that I have the latest version of the Terraform module for Azurerm. And we will see how this impacts when we run the Terraform init in a short while. And then we define a specific provider related settings. Now the provider is the target environment where we are going to deploy. This could be AWS or Google Cloud Provider or other supported providers. Since we are targeting Azure, we are using Azurerm provider, and then we specify this setting which says that skip the provider registration. Since we are going to use the Azure CLI mode, we don't need the provider registration here. That is why we are using the skip, and then we are just specifying the features. So that was regarding the sort of configuration for Terraform itself and the Microsoft Azure Resource Manager provider. The last part is actually creating the resource that we want to create in Microsoft Azure. Here we are creating a resource group. So we define that, or we describe that using this resource section. And we are going to use the resource group from the Azurerm or Azure Resource Manager. Before I go into the resource group, let's head over to the browser and quickly see what is the Azurerm. So if I head over to the Terraform registry, we have these different resource managers or different providers. And here we can see this is the official resource manager or official resource provided by Terraform for the Azurerm, Azure Resource Manager. And the latest version for this is 3.116. We can also see in the versions section here what were the other versions or the prior versions to this. So we had 3.115, 114, and looking at the release history, we can see that in a month there are multiple versions released for this particular resource provider or resource manager for Microsoft Azure. Now, in my configuration, I have said that I would like to target 3.114 or higher version, and we will see how does this impact the actual creation of the Terraform resources. The next thing is within the Azurerm provider, there are these different resources, and if we want to look at the resource group, we can filter it using the search option here. I have already opened that in the other tab, and this provides us the documentation for the resource group creation. And we will also get an example here about how to use that particular module or that particular section of the configuration. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and we are going to specify a name for this particular resource group, which is RG. So this is like a variable name or a resource name we are going to use within Terraform. But the actual name of the resource when it is created in Azure is going to be TF resource group. And we are also required to provide a location for the resource group which we are creating. So this is the Azure region where we want to create this resource group. I want to create this in Australia Southeast. So once we have this file, let's head over to the terminal, where I'm going to use the warp terminal, which is one of my favorite terminals to work with. I'm inside that folder where we have the main.tf file. We can run this Terraform version to see what version of Terraform we are running. Currently we are on 1.9.4, and if we go back to the Visual Studio Code, there was this configuration about the required version, which is greater than or equal to 1.9.4. So this refers to the Terraform CLI version that I want to use. Once we have this, we can run the Terraform init command, which will initialize the provider for us based on whatever settings we have configured. So you can see in the initializing provider step, it is looking at the HashiCorp Azurerm versions, and it is looking for a match which is greater than or equal to 3.114, and the actual version which is installed here is 3.116, because we gave that option of selecting the higher version, which is higher than 114. The latest version is 116. When we work with infrastructure as code, or when we work with these kind of tools, it's better to have a fixed version. For the demo purpose, I'm showing that we can refer to the latest version, but sometimes you want to make sure that when you provision resources, you use the exact version of the modules. So it is recommended that we use, if you want to create, let's say 3 or 4 different environments using exactly the same resource definitions, then you can pin the version to a specific version. Once we have this, the Terraform initialization bit is completed, And if we go in our Visual Studio Code and look at the folders, now you can see there is this .terraform file. There is also the log file which is created, and this is containing the information about the Terraform module, the Azurerm, reference to the Azurerm resource group. So it contains all that information which is required to create the actual resource. The next step in our process is to plan for this resource creation. So we can run the Terraform plan command here, and it will show us what all resources will be created based on the configuration that we have specified. In the output, we can see here that Terraform used the selected provider to generate the following execution plan. When we see plus sign, that means a new resource would be created. Since we are creating only one resource here, we are seeing the information related to the Azure Resource Group. The name of that is RG. The ID would be known once the plan is applied and the actual resource is created. The location would be Australia Southeast, and the name of that resource would be TF Resource Group. If we have multiple resources, we would see the impact of creating this plan on all those resources. And Terraform and other infrastructure as code has this concept of idempotency. That means if we change something in the definition of the resource, it would do a match between the current state and the desired state, and it will tell us what's the difference. So before we apply those changes, we would be able to see that those changes are exactly what we desired to make the changes in our infrastructure. With this, everything looks well set for us to go ahead and apply this. So we are going to run this Terraform apply command. Use this particular resource definition for the resource group. The output is similar to the Terraform plan, where it says it is going to create this resource, and it's asking us to confirm, do I want to go ahead with this? If I say yes, it is going to provision the resource for me. So while Terraform is creating the resource group, let's head over to Microsoft Azure for my subscription. And if we go into the resource group, in the output on the terminal, we can see that the apply has been completed. One resource has been added, and the name of that resource is TF Resource Group. So with that, we can see that the resource has been created. And if we go back to the Visual Studio Code, we also see one additional file created here, which is terraform.tf state. So when the resource is created, Terraform maintains its current state, and anytime we make changes to this resource definition, it would compare those changes against what is in the current state, and it would do the comparison, and it would decide what changes has to be done if we were to reapply the changes to the resource. So I hope you found this useful. And if we go back to the presentation, you can see that using these 4 basic steps to initialize the provider and to create a plan, and after that we apply that particular plan to the target environment, we are able to create the resources in declarative manner. That's the beauty of using a tool like Terraform, where we describe what we want to create using a descriptive language, and then the tool decides how to go about creating those resources. We don't have to look at the nitty-gritties of what needs to be created. We describe the properties that are required for that particular resource, and the actual provisioning is taken care by Terraform. I want to show the last part, which is to destroy or to delete that resource. And in here, we are going to use the Terraform destroy command, and we will pass the auto approve flag, which will automatically go ahead and delete that particular resource without asking us to confirm. Like when we did the Terraform apply, it was asking us to confirm whether we want to go ahead with the creation or not. In this case, I'm saying automatically approve the deletion request. We can do the same thing for apply as well. We can pass the auto approve flag as true. It will automatically apply the changes without asking for confirmation. So here we can see the Terraform is trying to delete the resource group that we created. We get a message saying it's destroying, and then there is also this refresh happening every few seconds, which again is a benefit I see with Terraform, that it gives us progress in terms of what is being happening in the background. Sometimes when we run things on the CLI, we don't get that feedback, and we don't know whether the process is still running or not. And after 16 seconds, we can see the destruction has been completed. If we head over back to the Azure portal And if I refresh this page where we were seeing the details of the resource group created, we can see that the resource is no longer available, and we get this message saying the resource is no longer found. So with that, we have completed the whole part of creating the resource and also deleting that resource using Terraform. I hope you found this video useful. In case you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and do let me know in the comments what other videos you would like to see in future. As part of this Terraform series, we would be seeing much more things coming in future, like how to create a Azure Kubernetes service cluster, how to create the PaaS resources, how to create web applications, and various other resources. We will also see how to use the variables and make it more extendable in a way that these things can be used as part of the CI/CD process as well, and not just from the developer's individual machine. So hope you find these videos useful. Until next time, code with passion and strive for excellence. Thanks for watching this.